Good afternoon. It's Tim Hitchcock here with Hey Hitchcock. I have a real special guest this evening. We've got Bill Boyd, and Bill's great-grandfather, if I'm getting all this right. Great grandfather, he can correct me if I get things wrong, is the one that actually started the nursery business in Middle Tennessee back in the, 1887?
Yes.
Or something like that. So we've got Bill, and we're going to talk about some family stories that has been handed down as to how the nursery business got started and how it's grown and improved and everything. So, Bill, nice to have you here.
Glad to be here.
Can you start out by telling us your family history of how the nursery business got started?
So I'm a fifth generation nurseryman. My great-great-grandfather, J.H.H. Boyd, actually lived in Cagle up on the mountain.
That's in Grundy County.
Sequatchie.
Sequatchie, okay, yeah. Right, yeah.
And anyway, he was a farmer, had one milk cow. And the way the story went, the cow ate the seed of a calacanthus, which the local people call it bubby plant. Anyway, ate it and died. It's poisonous. And so being a curious man, he got the doctor up there, and they cut the cow open, found out why the cow died. Being somewhat religious, he said, well, the good Lord gave me the cow. The good Lord took the cow away from me, so evidently I'm supposed to make my living off the land. And from there, he started collecting seed and plants, seed primarily at the time, and got to be pretty well known as far as knowing the types of seed, the plants that were up on the mountain. And so he was shipping them through the mail, and eventually he moved off into the Irving College Valley.
Now this was back in the 1880s.
Yeah, probably
when
maybe
he got started.
Yeah, it's probably 1870s. And he worked up there for a little while, and then the biggest problem was getting the product to where there was a rail station or whatever. And at the time, they didn't have a rail station up on Cagle, and they never did. They did eventually to Trace City, but so he came down.
So he moved his operation so he could transport his product.
Correct.
Better.
Correct. Yeah. He got to where he was doing enough business that he needed, a better way of shipping. And so he moved off up in the Irving College area, then eventually wound up there at the Forest Nursery.
Okay.
Where it is. And so, having, a pretty good sized family himself, he had to grow to be able to keep the family up.
Right.
And so with that, then the two sons that would actually work in the nursery was Jim Boyd and Fernando Campbell Boyd. Now, Fernando Campbell was my great-grandfather.
Okay.
And then, of course, as most families, family business, very few businesses with families involved that they all work. Somebody gets mad at something, and most time it's the siblings themselves can get along with each other. It's in-laws that seem to stir the pot. But anyway, so they split, and that was probably in the late 20s, early 30s.
Okay.
And Fernando Campbell Boyd started the Boyd Nursery Company.
Okay.
And Uncle Jim, he kept the Forest Nursery.
Okay. So Forest Nursery stayed out in the Irving College area.
Yeah, out Highway 56.
Out Highway 56. And F.C. Boyd, your great-grandfather, where did he?
He wound up in Westwood. Westwood used to be all farm nursery land. It started out the farm and then grew nursery stock on it for several years. And the packing barn that I remember was across from Westwood Church.
Okay.
And so the highway actually went through West Riverside. there really wasn't a road through Westwood at the time.
Oh, really? Okay.
It might have been a ford, but there was no
Yeah.
bridge.
Yeah.
And then, of course, with areas growing, whatever, they wound up building the bridge. But anyway, Westwood was that was the first board nursery growing area.
Okay. And the bridge, the old bridge, was the F.C. Boyd
Yes.
bridge,
Yes.
named after your great grandfather.
Right. So. Correct. And then with it, after a while, land close to town got a little more expensive.
Right.
And when people needed housing, then at that point, that's when they started selling off the first road, which was River Drive.
Yeah. Well, Bill, we're going to have to take a break.
Good.
And right after the break, we'll get back to talking about how Westwood was developed.
Okay.
Thank you. We'll be back in just a few minutes. This is Tim Hitchcock back with Hey Hitchcock with my guest Bill Boyd from Flower City Nursery. And if you've been with us, you know that Bill is a fifth-generation nurseryman. His great-great-grandfather started the nursery industry in Middle Tennessee back in the 1800s. And he's telling us a little history. For the break, for the commercials, we were talking about how Westwood was actually just nursery stock, fields of nursery stock. And then as McMinnville started to grow, his great-great-grandfather started subdividing and selling off lots. Can you pick that up, Bill?
So, before they go out of town, cheaper land got. And so they, great-grandfather, he started developing Westwood and laid it out pretty good as far as the layout. It worked out good, whatever.
Right.
If you go further out where Boyd Christian School was, that was still farm. And he raised registered Angus cattle.
Oh, okay.
And so with that part of it, before they subdivided it, he had a Angus farm there.
Okay, so his dad was the one that had the cow that died.
Right.
And he decided he wasn't going to fool with livestock anymore. So just like a lot of sons, they're not going to follow exactly in their dad's footsteps.
Exactly.
So he's decided he was going to start a cattle operation.
Right. And so they moved out to out on the Marston Highway, out past Smart Station, and that's when they started the new nursery out there. The packing barn was, when it was in Westwood, the nursery operation was across from Westwood Church. And even though I think I'm old, I'm quite young, and I remember when the packing barn was there, not when it was in operation, but it was, still standing.
Right.
So they moved out there on Highway 55, and part of the old packing barn was actually part of the old barracks down at AEDC when it was an Army base.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, my father went down with a crew and helped tear down some of the barracks for the wood.
Oh, okay.
So, when they dismantled, that's where a lot of the local people, were able to increase the size of the house, the barn, or whatever.
It's interesting talking about that. I've got on my farm, one of my buildings was an old train station. I believe it was at Morrison that was torn down. Back used to in those days, if you tore something down,
you didn't burn it.
You didn't burn it. No, you took it and rebuilt it. It's not having to do with the nursery business, but there used to be a company in Warren and Van Buren County called Rocky River Coal and Lumber Company.
Right.
And they made wooden spokes for Ford Motor Company for the Model T and Model A and
Right.
everything before they went to metal wheels. They provided the spokes, and they had their own railroad from Campaign all the way up to the top of Rocky River Mountain. And they bought, you could buy a house from Sears and Roebuck
Right.
out of the catalog, a pre-cut house that was delivered by rail car. And when they went out of business in 1939, when Ford started making metal wheels and canceled their contract with them, there were hundreds of houses that were either moved intact or dismantled, moved, and rebuilt. We actually have 2 rental homes that were originally built in 1918 that are Sears and Roebuck homes. And,
Right.
and once you see, they had 2 styles out there. One style was for the laborers, and one style was for the foreman and the management. And there are a lot of houses in McMinnville that either were those Sears and Roebuck houses or they were patterned
Right.
after the Sears and Roebuck houses. So they built the packing barn from
From the
timber from the AEDC.
World War II, I believe they housed
Barracks and everything that they had down there.
They had prisoners down there.
Yeah. Actually, speaking about that, my dad was in World War II. He was wounded in the Battle of the Bulge. But his partner, my uncle, he used to go up to Crossville. They had German prisoners at a POW camp up there, and he would go up and get 3 or 4 guys and bring them down, and they'd work for the day, and then he'd take them back up to Crossville. There was a lot of farm labor, free farm labor, that was used from the prisoners during World War II. But I digress.
No, that's fine. That's fine because my grandfather on my mother's side, her dad, he actually helped build the barracks.
Oh, really?
Yeah, AEDC.
So he helped build it.
And then
On your mother's side,
my daddy came and tore them down.
tore it down. How long were those up? Do you have any idea?
They were probably, I want to say probably 7, 8, 10 years at the most.
Okay. So they were, relatively new.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and most of it was rough cut lumber, so
Yeah.
it didn't rot
Yeah.
near as fast.
Yeah. So eventually, Westwood, they made more money off of selling the property
Right.
than what the nursery stock was bringing.
Right.
And there was always more land. And
There's more land cheaper out.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. And you got to realize, the listeners need to realize that back then, a lot of this stuff, there weren't a lot of people that had vehicles. Most of this was horse and wagon. And you talk about coming from the what's the Westwood Bridge right now, it'd take you, 20, 30 minutes to get out to where FC Boyd Christian School is right now.
Right.
You take a mule or two pulling an old wagon, and
Takes a while.
takes a while. Takes a long time.
If you don't believe it, just follow some Amish around.
That's true. So eventually, the operation made its way out to where the country club is now.
Right. So it was the main office, and packing barn and shipping yard was out there. And then my FC Boyd Sr.'s family, he had 13 kids. And my grandfather, Tomlin, was one of the older ones. My father, Joe, was one of the older second generation.
Okay.
And so, like I said, with most families, they all can't work together. So
Right.
my grandfather split off and started Flower City Nursery back in the 40s.
Okay.
And then Robert Boyd, he split off and started Globe Nursery.
Okay.
Now, both of those nurseries were off the Vervilla Road originally.
Okay.
And so both of them continued until my great uncle Robert, he passed away, and so there was no one to take it over. There was, but there wasn't. So
he had descendants, but they weren't interested in the nursery business.
right. Well, his daughter Betty married Andrew Myers
Okay.
of Myers Cove Nursery.
Oh, okay.
So that's how Andy got into the nursery business.
Okay.
It was through Uncle Bob.
Okay.
So his wife Betty, they still have the nursery. And so when Globe shut down, she tried running it there for a while, but it was 2 locations, 2 operations.
Oh, yeah.
It's, spread pretty thin. So she shut it down and moved.
And that was back approximately what year?
That was probably in the late 90s, I guess.
Okay.
Early 2000s.
Okay. Yeah, two locations. It reminds me, there was a lady one time called me up, and she wanted to, some daylilies, and I told her what we had, and she said, "Now, where are you located?" And I told her, and she said, "Oh, well, that's a little far for me to drive. I live in Irving College. If you ever start an operation out in Irving College, can you take down my number and let me know, and I'll come and get something?" Yeah, we just kind of stay where we're at.
Right, exactly.
Additional locations are a headache. I remember back before I ever got into the nursery business, when I was still a dairy farmer, there were a few guys here that tried opening up retail locations up in Nashville.
Yeah.
And I don't think any of them ever worked out.
Most of the time, they didn't have the right person managing it. And from that, if you have a partner that's part owner,
Yeah.
he's going to try to make it work.
Yeah.
But if it's the hired help and, it's not like what he thought it was going to be, he's not going to push it near as hard.
It's a whole different thing when you've got skin in the game, and
Exactly.
a percentage of every sale is going to wind up going in your pocket.
Or your name's on the banknote.
Yes. Yeah, that is a motivating factor, knowing that the bank can come and take it away from you.
That's correct. That's right.
So going back to your great-grandfather and great-great-grandfather, do you have any family stories about
Well, so my great-great-grandfather, he, like I said, he collected seed and plant material. Vanderbilt's that owned Biltmore, when they built it, they ordered a train car load of hemlock liners that he shipped to them that they planted on the estate of Biltmore.
how many was that?
There's no telling. I mean, you take a train car, you can pack an awful lot of course, he knew the more he put on, the more he could sell.
Yeah.
He just didn't throw them in. It's like, let's pack them, boys.
If I remember right, and my memory's not the best in the world, there was a little circular that came out in 1997 talking about 110 years, or 110 years in the nursery business. And in it, if I remember right, it said that Biltmore ordered 1 million bare root plants. Right. Yeah. Now you think about 1 million, and this is all little stuff.
This is not
big
6
stuff.
to 12 inches, 18 inches at the most.
But that most of the Biltmore estate at that time was planted in product that came from Warren and surrounding counties.
Right. Exactly. So if you ever visit, you see the big hemlock, that's where they came from.
That's amazing. Now, also in this, there was a story, and I'm not sure if this was your great-grandfather, your great-grandfather, but and I don't know if you've heard this one or not, about a ship. They were shipping a lot of product over to Europe.
Right.
Tell us about that.
Well, at that time you didn't have airplanes, so we went by boat or didn't go. And so, for a boat to cross the Atlantic, it's probably couple of weeks. So it takes a while, and you've got to pack it to where that it will withstand the salt water, the air, because, plants don't like salt water, so therefore, they'll die. So, but the plants, the Boyds have shipped plants around the world of different sizes, different varieties. The genus of plant material in our area is over 500. That's larger. The number of plant genus here is way more than what there is in the whole continent of Europe.
Really?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So with that's where, because of the different types of plants that we had that they didn't, the avid plantsmen, they wanted something new.
So that the fact that there are that many different cultivars, different genuses, that adds to the mystique and the fact that Warren County is the nursery capital of the world.
Right.
Because we just have a lot more. We're going to have to take another little commercial break here. We'll be back in just a few minutes with Bill Boyd again. This is Tim Hitchcock with Hey Hitchcock. This is Tim Hitchcock with Hey Hitchcock, back with Bill Boyd. We've been discussing his family history in the nursery business. We were talking before the commercial break about shipping different cultivars, different genuses of plants to Europe. Bill, can we pick back up on that a little bit?
Yeah. Actually, I have shipped plants around the world myself.
Really?
Through Flower City, yes. Went to a trade show in Essen, Germany back in the mid-'90s.
Now, Jerry Blankenship was our guest last week, and
he was
working.
He was working for the department,
marketing specialist in the Department of Agriculture.
Right.
So this is one of the shows.
That's one of those shows.
You went to, okay.
Yes. Anyway, picked up a couple of customers. One was in Belgium. He ordered 10,000 white dogwood seedlings.
Wow.
And about 1,500 pink dogwood.
Okay.
And he told me, he says, I don't care if a few of the limbs are broke. He says, pack the crate as full as you can get. He says, I want no just dead air space.
Right.
So we actually found out what the actual dimensions of a air container was.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like 8 feet wide, 5 feet tall, 10 feet long.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a crate built. We lined it with styrofoam.
Mm-hmm.
And lined it with plastic. And we packed it, and we packed it, and we packed it. Of course, we had to get it inspected and had to wash all the dirt off to ship overseas. And we did it on a Saturday morning. And I took it to Atlanta to the airport, pulled it out on a tarmac. They picked it up, set it on the thing that puts it in the airplane. I saw it go in the airplane. The next day, it was in Belgium.
Wow.
And that was the customer sent a truck to pick it up and had to turn around and go back and get another truck because the truck he sent wasn't big enough. But, less than 24 hours overnight delivery.
Yeah.
It cost him about 25% freight, which really shocked me. I figured it'd be a whole lot more.
Yeah.
But then I've shipped stuff back the other way, back to China.
Now, what all inspection is required? What's required of you as the grower and the shipper?
So if we're shipping overseas, first off, you have to wash the plants, wash all the dirt from it. Now, that's partially because the United States has that protocol. In other words, if you're buying something from outside the United States, they're required to wash. So therefore, we have to do the same. It's not necessarily the best thing for the plant, but that's the way it is. And it's to keep from shipping soil-based pathogens. And so once you get it washed, the nursery inspector for the state Department of Ag comes out, they go through every bundle. They just don't look at it and say, oh, yeah, it's good. No, they sit there and go through every bundle, make sure they find no disease of any type, no insects, whatever. And then once they see that it's good, then they'll turn around and write you a phytosanitary certificate. And the same way with your hardwood lumber that's been shipped out here. Once it's been kiln dried, then they will come and inspect it, and they will put a stamp on it and write a phytosanitary so they can ship it overseas as well.
Okay. In my business, I've had to get phytos done when we used to ship quite a bit of material, daylilies and hostas, to Canada.
Right.
And that required a phytosanitary certificate.
Right. Even though it's not necessarily a major border as far as barrier, but because you are going to a different country, that's what you have to do.
Yeah. And there are different regulations even shipping things inside the United States.
Correct. From state to state, every state has their own rules and regulations. And so as you ship from state to state, then you have to abide to those.
We when we first were just doing bare root, we got a big order from Monrovia Nursery out in Azusa, California. And you're laughing because everybody else laughed when I told them I had that order. And they go, "Oh, you don't know what you're getting into shipping into California." We had to wash the plants, make sure that they were just pristine. You could have eaten off of these plants.
Yeah.
They were so clean. And even with that, we were told that, if the inspector is there and a California bug crawls on one of the boxes and he sees it, they'll just go ahead and condemn the whole shipment. They don't ship it back to you.
No, they burn it.
They burn the whole thing.
Yep.
And I remember this was like a 20,000. It was my first really big order. And I remember just sweating bullets till I found out that, that they had approved it. It had made it through the inspection process. And even as it is now, we're not shipping bare root, but we're shipping small 2 1/4 or 4-inch containers with potting soil, and we have to have certain pesticides in there to guarantee that there's no Japanese beetles and fire ants and things like that. And I don't know if you've ever looked at the fire ant map.
Oh, yeah.
But there's a map that the USDA puts out, and it shows where every county in the United States that has fire ants. And I hadn't looked at the map in 2 or 3 years, but there were like 2 counties down in south central Texas out of the entire state
that claims they don't have
that claim they don't have any fire ants. And how on earth either those 2 counties are entirely concrete slabs or they have fire ants.
Early on, Daddy always said, if you're shipping somewhere where there's too many problems, you're better off to just cancel the order.
Yeah.
And California is one of those places. They can ship you all the junk they want to.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yet you can't ship them anything but pristine,
Yeah.
And then they'll turn around and, like you said, turn around and say, nope, something's wrong, and burn the whole load.
Yeah. We have to put a sticker on every box that leaves that has potting soil, stating that it has the necessary chemicals for fire ants and Japanese beetles and things like that. And we also ship some seeds. And we have shipped seeds, which if it's a seed, there's no soil and it doesn't require that. But we've had inspectors that send us a little nasty letter that says, you don't have the right documentation. And at first we'd say, well, that doesn't need documentation because there's no soil. Right. But we find it easier just to put the documentation on everything that we ship out because some people just don't realize
there's no dirt.
That there's no dirt. There's no dirt. It can't live if there's no dirt.
No, right.
Anyway, Has that been Europe been a good market for you? Is that kind of a one and done thing? Or?
No, we shipped a few times. It all depends on what the value of the dollar is.
Okay, right.
Now, if the dollar value is low compared to the euro, then you can sell product. But if the dollar is higher than the euro, well, by the time they add the freight to it, they can't justify it.
Yeah, yeah. We run into that. We import about 500,000 daffodils and about 500,000 tulips,
Right.
and then we get a lot of hostas and other bulbs out of Europe. And some years, because of the relationship of the dollar and the euro, it's twice as much as the year before, and then some years it's half as much as the year before, right. And it just depends on that. So you have to kind of learn how to farm the currency exchange rate too.
Yeah, it's just not all about just planting it and growing it.
No, that's the easiest. That's the easiest.
That's the easiest part of it. Yeah.
Now,
it is.
When your great grandfather back in the 1870s, 80s, 90s, how did he advertise? How did he let people know what product and seeds that he had?
He wound up advertising like through, I'm gonna say, the New York Times.
Okay.
Put an ad in the paper, and of course at that time the New York Times went out, across the country.
Mm-hmm.
It may take a week to get it somewhere, but it still,
right.
got out. And so that was, there was no TV, there was no radio, there was telegraph, but
yeah, you didn't know who to send the telegraph to.
No. So it was through the newspapers.
Okay, it's kind of funny. When I first got started, I wound up selling a lot of plants to some churches that were just being built.
Right.
And I thought that there was can't even remember the name of the magazine. I saw it somewhere I think it was called Your Church.
Yeah.
And I thought that might be a little niche. So I did put an ad in this
right.
magazine for Daylily Nursery. Mm-hmm. Okay. And people didn't read that it was plants, but we got all kinds of calls wanting furniture. They thought it was furniture for nurseries in the church. And I almost thought maybe I should start a furniture business of small furniture
right.
for nurseries in churches.
Yeah, that's usually what happens. People, when you mention the nursery, they think of babies.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've got a good story on that. I'll tell when we come back. But we need to take another break, Bill.
All right.
We'll be back after this commercial. This is Tim Hitchcock back with Hey Hitchcock with my guest Bill Boyd. Bill, we were talking about advertising, and when people see nursery, they think of a nursery, like
correct,
for kids,
right.
Or at a hospital. I had a 800 number for my nursery that was the same last 7 digits as the St. Louis Children's Hospital, believe it or not. And so I'd get calls from people trying to call that hospital
right.
all the time.
Right.
And I'd say, no, you've got to dial the area code. And they would say, well, I thought if I dialed 800, I didn't have to pay for it. I said, no, you don't have to pay for it. I pay for it, but you're not getting the children's hospital. Right. And one lady one time, I tried to explain it to her. This is a nursery. We sell plants. And she said, just put me through to the nurse's station. And I said, ma'am, I'm in Tennessee. This is a nursery. We grow plants. I need to talk to somebody in the nursery, so just put me through to the nurse's station. And I just could not convince her otherwise.
She had it in her mind that she called the right number.
Yeah.
And that you were the one that was wrong.
Yeah. And I had people that would tell me all the time, well, I've got a sticker. I've got a magnetic sticker on my refrigerator, and it says 1-800-454-5437. And I said, if you can send that to me, I'll send you $50 because then I can make them pay for, all these calls I'm getting.
Right.
Of course, nobody ever sent me one because they realized they had called the wrong number.
So, talking about advertising, back in the 60s, there was a magazine, nursery magazine called American Nurseryman. It was actually published twice a week.
Twice a week?
Twice a week.
Wow.
It came out on the 1st and the 15th. They had a deal where if you ran a 1-inch space saver ad, which name and address, phone number,
Right.
pretty much, that if you ran that 24 issues, that if you want to do a half page, full page, you would get the 24 issue rate.
Okay.
And so back in the 60s, Daddy, that was the way he got his price list out. He would buy 2 or 4 pages and basically list his catalog
Right.
on it.
Yeah.
And, of course, back then there was no cell phones. There was no fax machines. There was no emails, whatever.
No.
So everything came through the mail.
Right.
And, once it, and he would run it probably for 3 months in the spring.
Yeah.
Maybe 1 month in the fall. And that's how he generated sales.
Now that one of that was the first publication that I advertised in when I started was American Nurseryman. Of course, at that point it was a monthly magazine. Right. Are they still in business? Do they still?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, I never see it.
Yeah, it's like a lot of the trade shows that the economy, everything has changed so much. A lot of the trade shows that were just you thought were essential.
Oh yeah.
To your business are just no longer existing.
Talking about trade shows and even the publications, you can get it online, you look at this and look at that, whatever. But the magazine, someone had to take time and put it together.
Oh, yeah.
And you would flip through it, one looking for your competition to see what they had. Yeah. And the other was to see what the newest plant was.
Have you ever, of course, most of your stuff is big. I don't know if you do much bare root. Have you ever ordered stuff from your competition?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we all do. Yeah. Ordered, find out how they're packing it.
Oh, yeah.
What the quality of the plants are. And, I've learned things about, hey, that's a better way of packing than what I'm doing. Or, hey, I'm going to have to up my game a little bit. Or you look at it and go, wow, I hope everybody orders from them because they'll only order once.
Right, exactly. Well, and that was kind of like the trade shows. You would go and you would walk around and you would look at your competition.
Yes.
What they brought.
Yes.
What they had. A lot of times your competition wouldn't send you a catalog, but you could pick it up at the trade show.
Right.
And so not that you were price fixing, but at least you had an idea whether you were in the ball game or not.
I remember up at the Baltimore show, there was a guy that I'd been selling to for years, and he was just turning around and reselling.
Right.
And I went to the Baltimore show for the first time, and one of his customers who was buying my product through him happened to pick up my catalog and, placed an order. And when this gentleman called to say, well, it's about time for you to place your order, he says, well, I'm buying directly from Daylily Nursery now. And this guy called me up, and he called me every name in the book for stealing his customer. And I said, I don't know what you're talking about, but you and I were both at that trade show.
Yeah.
Now, don't you think that there's a possibility that he came by and picked up my catalog? I had never heard of this guy. Right. How would I know how to poach your customer unless you gave me his name, which you're sure as heck not going to do?
Exactly.
And he calmed down a little bit and, kind of apologized, and we still do business today. And we keep up with each other's kids and family. And he's a good friend now, but boy, he's about ready to take my head off.
Oh, if you want to see what customers all about, let the money step in.
Now, speaking of that, there's a lot of competition here in Warren County. I remember this one nursery that used to buy bare root from me, and they were just passing it on. They had my stuff listed, and the office staff was told that when I came in to bring in an invoice and get a check, everybody was to turn all their papers upside down so I couldn't see any customers that they might be writing information down on.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing of, and this is getting into the bare root stuff again, which there were two nurseries on the same road. And one of the people found the first person that was picked up by UPS found out that the second person being picked up by UPS, that one of the people there would start talking to the driver and engage them in conversation in the office, and they'd have people go in the back of the truck.
And go through the truck.
And write down the names of boxes, customers on boxes from the first nursery that I'd already put on there.
That doesn't surprise me. I have been in some of the local nurseries, be sitting there waiting to talk to someone, the owner or whatever, and the phone rang, and, they're busy. I'd pick up the phone and answer it like I was working there. I've sold, 2 or 3 tractor loads to one guy one time.
Oh, now with my business now, that's really not a thing, because 99% of our business is just online.
Right.
And it may be, they may place 2 or 3 orders a year, or maybe one if they're just looking for one, specific thing. But, it doesn't do me any good to see somebody else's customer. It doesn't do anybody else any good to see my customers.
Right. Well, in the wholesale side, at some point, you want to say there's less customers, but there's not. The problem is where we would direct ship to 99% of our customers, they're buying now. Those customers are buying from re-wholesalers.
Right.
So, like our nursery there at one time, we had probably 750 customers.
Yeah.
And we're probably down to less than 50.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I've got
the volume's higher.
Yeah.
But as far as, the number of customers, they'll go to the re-wholesaler, pick up 2 of this, 3 of that, whatever,
Yeah.
and they're out the door.
Yeah, I've got a filing cabinet full of files of people that used to do, a lot of business with us, but they're out of business now.
Right.
The box stores really put a nail in the coffin of the mom and pop garden center. I think I told Trent or somebody, back in the height of the Atlanta, the SNA show, I'd probably have 200-300 couples come by every year and say, we're going to start, my wife and I are going to start up a garden center.
Yep.
And, man, you just don't see that anymore.
Well, the people who had garden centers, small garden centers, small towns, whatever, their family didn't want any part of it.
Right. Because they saw how much work was involved.
That's what it was. And in the nursery business, you make some money. If you hit a good lick every now and then, you can get rich. But for the most part, it's only a living.
Yeah.
It's only a living.
Yeah.
And, at the end of the day, if you mistreat somebody, I promise you it will turn around and bite you.
Oh, absolutely.
It will.
Absolutely.
So, when you ship a product, you make sure you ship the best you've got to them. If it's not, you make sure you tell them.
Yeah.
And if you've done all of that, then, most of the time those customers keep coming back.
Speaking of that, I can remember early in the days in the 80s, late 80s, when I got into the nursery business, that I'd see ads in the paper, and it would say, I'll be in Warren County on such and such a day.
Right.
I'll buy coals. I'll buy, second-class product. There were people that would come down, and that's what they dealt in, because they would try and pass it off to somebody else. But, it was, I remember even with bare root, there was a company that said, "Send me anything with a root.
Yep.
If it will live, I don't care what it looks like. You can sweep up the sweepings on the floor after you cull stuff out, and I'll buy those."
Right. I know Tennessee used to have a bad reputation not having quality nursery stock. And, of course, nurserymen, wholesale nurserymen, they sell on a promise. You know, we dig it, we ship it, we hope they'll pay when they get it or whatever. You know, I always...
We both got stories on those.
I've always said, you know, a sale's not complete till you have the cash in hand.
Right.
So, you know, you can load all the trucks you want, but until you get the cash, it's not sold.
Yep.
But I was at a trade show, and one guy came up. He says, "Oh, you're from Tennessee." He says, I've never gotten anything good from Tennessee. I said, "Well, let me ask you a question." I said, "Did you beat the nurseryman down to where there was no money left in it?" "Well, I always try to get the best price." I said, "Well, let me ask you another question. Did you pay him?" And most of the time they turn around and walk away.
Yeah.
Because they knew, you know, they could badmouth Tennessee and Tennessee nurseries, but at the end of the day, you know, they didn't pay the nursery. Yeah. So therefore he could badmouth them.
Yeah. I've had enough bankruptcies, and you probably have too, to put all your kids through college. Yeah.
Yep.
I guess we all have. So what's the future for Flower City Nursery?
Well, I'm planting more today than I ever have, so, you know, I may have a little gray hair on me. You know,
we both do.
Got my red, white, and blue card, and but you know, it's, you know, I'm gonna keep doing it as long as I can.
So you're still going. I probably will too. So thanks for coming in, Bill, and telling us about your family's history, and it's been a pleasure to have you. And this is Tim Hitchcock with Hey Hey Hitchcock, reminding everybody that we'll talk about agriculture, we'll talk about horticulture, floriculture, and maybe even some aquaculture, but that's about as close as you're ever going to get me to any kind of culture. We'll see you next week.